Oh hi, there was a time in my youth where I wished that I could someday see a Spider-Man film. In 1989, Tim Burton made Batman. It broke all kinds of records, it showed that superhero films could be successful, and yet nothing really became of that, except for the terrible sequels that it spawned.
Alright everyone, chill.
I was a Marvel Comics fanboy as a kid. So I still have these old banker boxes here in my house. Sorry, let me focus up here. And some of these go back to like the early 1990s, ancient times now. Cloak and Dagger. The new Warriors, better than the old lame Warriors that we had before. The Spectacular Spider-Man. The Sensational Spider-Man. Web of Spider-Man. Spider-Man Unlimited. And then my personal favorite, Spider-Man. And because Marvel Comics was a hair's width away from bankruptcy, it started selling the rights to its characters, which is why we got a pretty bad Hulk film made by the great Ang Lee, and two really bad Fantastic Four films, and that terrible Daredevil film starring the guy who isn't Matt Damon. And though it is certainly not a perfect film, Sam Raimi made Spider-Man in 2002, something that I had been waiting years for. I think it's very much like Star Wars fans who for a while convinced themselves that Phantom Menace was great until reality hit them and they had to accept that these are no good. What I'm trying to say is that I think there are a lot of problems with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, even number 2, which is admittedly pretty decent, and the problem is that the filmmakers are approaching the characters as inherently silly instead of the subject matter. Because come on, men and women jumping around in stretchy underwear suits or fantastical mutant beasts walking around having normal conversations is kind of ridiculous. It's just that Marvel and DC and other comic book companies realized a long time ago that while the situations can bring about humor, the characters are what draws people in. If we perceive our heroes, literally superheroes, as foolish or are the butt of jokes, then we begin to distance ourselves and realize everything is a bit corny. So in 2008, I was surprised to see that the movie Iron Man was receiving a bunch of great reviews, like over 90% on Rotten Tomatoes good. Now I have my problems with Rotten Tomatoes, but it's still not often that you get to see that type of response to a superhero film. So I needed to go and see it. Tony Stark was a character that showed up occasionally in crossover events that I had read as a child, but I really didn't know much about the character. Plus it was starring Robert Downey Jr., who I had sort of forgotten about after he had gone to prison in the 90s. But I was shocked at how much I liked it. This was something different, at least from Marvel Studios. It had a sense of fun, but was also treating the characters with respect. This wasn't a goofy beat-em-up. It was a science fiction slash fantasy mashup with the perfect casting attached. And I wish I could remember how, but I know that I had read somewhere that I needed to stay until after the credits. The friend I went with wanted to leave as soon as the movie was over, but I convinced them to stay. And boy, am I glad I did. The revelation that Nick Fury was being played by Samuel L. Jackson, that there may be a plan to have an Avengers movie? Yeah, right. Next you're gonna tell me that there's a movie about Thor coming up. What's that? My friend had no idea why I was freaking out, but this was exciting. What I always loved about comics was that the world felt truly lived in. It wasn't just one superhero, it was all the superheroes. They would interact with each other all the time. Any movie that was made was careful to make it appear that this was the only special person in the world. Now, even with that big hit in Iron Man, it was followed up a few weeks later, yes, it was only weeks, with The Incredible Hulk starring Ed Norton, and it wasn't great. It had some flourishes, but certainly was not as entertaining as Iron Man had been. But Robert Downey Jr. did show up at the end, showing how Marvel was looking at this universe it was creating. Now, I could go into a detailed review of each of the following Marvel films. Let me know if you'd like that down in the comments below. But here's a quick rundown. Iron Man 2, huge letdown, although I feel like I'm alone in believing it's the worst Iron Man film. Thor, fairly bland. The world of Asgard feels so empty, but Chris Hemsworth is great. Captain America, the First Avenger. Maybe I'm surrounded by weirdos, but most people I know hate this one. But I love it. I enjoy that it's set in World War II, it has its own unique feel, and I am always moved by the emotional journey of Steve Rogers. The Avengers. Bonkers that this film even exists. It expanded the world, beautifully combined the characters, everyone was given a moment to shine. It's a movie that on paper I don't think should work, but it totally does. Iron Man 3. People hate on this film, but I like it. It depends if you find the kid in it annoying. I don't. Plus, I do enjoy how they pulled the rug out from everyone who thought they knew what was going to happen in the movie with the Mandarin. Thor: The Dark World. A bit better than the original Thor, but that isn't saying much. This is really when I began to notice the problems Marvel has with villains. They often aren't interesting by themselves, and each movie seems to end with a giant beam of light that the heroes need to stop. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. The start of each film basically being an Avengers film, but I've never understood that criticism really. We know these characters and I have fun with them. This film is maybe my favorite of all the Marvel films. It's certainly the one I go back to the most. Guardians of the Galaxy. So much fun. I left with a stupid smile on my face. Who knew Batista could steal the show? The villain is awful though. Just really, really bad. But everything else makes up for it. Avengers: Age of Ultron. Marvel is starting to show its cracks. Still fun, the Ultron character is great, but it's hard to juggle that many characters, plus introduce more, and have a satisfying film. I still have a bit of fun with it though. How many more are there? Oof. Ant-Man. I'm a hater on this movie. I love Paul Rudd, he does his best, but the script and direction do not help him. I'm hoping the sequel solves those problems, but this feels like a throwback to those superhero films of the 90s, instead of what Marvel had been trying to do. Captain America: Civil War. Okay, I admit it, I'm a Captain America fanboy, even though I'm Canadian. I like how they sewed the division between Cap and Iron Man, and that last fight scene. From how it's staged, to how it's acted, to the music, I think is the best cinematically the Marvel films have ever been. Again, wish the villain could have been a better presence. Doctor Strange. Great casting again, but I think this is just a slightly above mediocre film. It was something I had completely forgotten about seeing the next day. But what I respect is that Marvel is trying out different genres within its universe. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I still had fun with this, but it has the problem that many sequels have in that it didn't feel new anymore. Still funny, and I love Kurt Russell in this film, but it turns into a bunch of pixels bopping around the screen, which I've never been a fan of. Spider-Man: Homecoming. Marvel finally got the rights back to Spider-Man, sort of, and it's the closest they've come to nail that character. Tony Stark / Iron Man essentially becomes the father figure Peter Parker has yearned for. Michael Keaton has come full circle in his superhero films and is now a villain, but a villain who is understandable. Not that it absolves him, but I get why he turned to crime. Some of the special effects are iffy, but man, if the acting doesn't elevate this to being really good. Thor: Ragnarok. Hands down the funniest of the Marvel films, and mostly based off character moments. However, that's also the main criticism. It could be too funny. By focusing on laughs, it forgot to make a resonant film. And what a waste of Cate Blanchett, the most egregious of the bad villains in Marvel films. And finally, Black Panther. I feel I'm going to get a lot of hate on this one too. It's fine, but I didn't love it, which is a shame because the villain for once is great. He has motive, he's charismatic, but our protagonist disappears for a good portion of the film, and the country erupts into war real quickly. Great casting though, I love Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. I equally love the director Ryan Coogler, so maybe my expectations were just too high. Marvel's cinematic universe has had a downside. As much fun as I've had with the film series, and is exactly what I always wanted when I dreamed of superhero films as a kid, it's had a bad effect on Hollywood. Why it works so well for Marvel is that they've had 50 years of practice in the comics industry, but Universal trying to make a universe for their monsters seems weird. DC has tried to rush theirs to disastrous results, in my opinion. Not everyone wants a universe, and not every franchise needs to be. I don't need a Harold and Kumar universe. Or maybe I do. This is also part of a larger trend where movies have started to feel like TV and TV has started to feel more like movies, but that's a topic for another day. I'm looking forward to the near 3-hour extravaganza that is going to be Avengers: Infinity War. These storylines we've been following for 10 years are going to have some deep payoffs. At least I hope so. And sure, superheroes are perhaps not high art, but they don't need to be. They are our current folk heroes, the stories that reveal a bit about our humanity, stories that make us a little bit happier and can take our minds off the evils of the world we feel so powerless in stopping. Maybe somebody needs to make that Iron Man suit for real. But I'd like to know more about what you think. Do you watch the Marvel films? Which ones are your favorite? Which ones do you not like? Do you think it's time to do another Howard the Duck movie like I do? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kyle. I upload videos every Monday and Thursday. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like. And if you want to help get me closer to that live pizza party, consider becoming a Patreon supporter for $1 per month. I should let you know, I was also bitten by a radioactive spider, and now I'm dying of cancer.